So earlier this week, we have celebrated Independence Day. We celebrated July 4, a distinctly American holiday. A few years ago, many years ago, and about 20 years ago, I was in Jordan on an archaeological dig, and we had a bunch of Canadians there. And it was an interesting week because on July 1, we celebrated Canada Day. And then on July 4, we celebrated Independence Day for the Americans. And I hope none of my Canadian friends see this video, but I prefer July 4. It's a special day. There are many benefits of this day. We celebrate independence, liberty, freedom. And we believe that this is a God-given right. The Declaration of Independence. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal. Oh, that we reach that. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men and women are created equal, and they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. That's what this day is supposed to be about, that we celebrated on Thursday. It's a special day of independence for native-born and those that have come from other countries and become part of our great nation. A name like Zollman, you have to understand that it's not a native name. My ancestors came from Germany in about 1878. And we're proud of our freedoms. We're proud of our country. It's all about the American way. It's the spirit of 76. We vehemently demand our freedoms. I thought this was a fun picture. The United States of America independent since 1776. It's something we love. However, there are some problems with independence. The problems with independence are many. And unfortunately, many people don't understand what independence really is. Independence does not mean freedom to do anything you want. You are perfectly free to swing your fist. You have the liberty to swing your fist, but your liberty to swing your fist ends at this tip of my nose. That's the limits of liberty. And so there are limits to liberty. To help us understand that, we are a society of laws that help define the limits of independence. And really, it's not something our framers of our Constitution and our Declaration of Independence came up in the 1700s and 1800s with. It's really God's plan. That's why God gave us all these guidelines and laws in the Bible to help delineate the limits of our freedom so that we can live in a society in which all men and women are equal. And so we have these limits. There's another problem with independence. And one problem with independence, and there are many, by the way, but just a couple I'm looking at, is that if you grant independence to some, you have to grant it to all. Now, this is very troublesome, because let's be honest, there are some real wackos out there in this world and in our country. Right? And they have just as much freedom to be a wacko as I have freedom to be a wacko. It's freedom for all. Of course, we embrace it for religious freedom. I'm so thankful to live in a country where we have this religious freedom. We have the freedom to think and to believe as we want. We have the freedom to be here on Sabbath morning and not worrying that someone is going to be peeping in, spying on us to restrict our religious freedoms. What a blessing it is. And because of this, Seventh-day Adventists have always been defenders of religious freedom, of liberty, and justice for all. On the individual level, there are some problems with freedom. We like to portray ourselves as independent, able to take care of ourselves, competent, able. We can meet our own needs, especially if you're a professional, in a professional field. We want people to think that we are able to take care of ourselves. We don't need anyone to help us along. I've personally found that especially when I left the seminary. I was raised by a single mom through all my years. My dad left home when I was 8 years old. And my mom used to tell me that there was nothing I could not do. Now, I found out she was a liar. There were things I couldn't do. But I believed it for many years. And I have to admit that it made me grow up just a little bit independent and cocky. I didn't need help from anybody. I could handle it. I remember my first job out of seminary. I was the intern pastor at the Glendale Seventh-day Adventist Church in Indianapolis, Indiana. It was an interesting experience because we were changing both the youth pastor or the intern pastor and the senior pastor at the same time. And when I got there, the senior pastor wasn't there. And so I was the intern pastor, and I was basically running the church for a little while. So it was an interesting thing. And so I went out and got some business cards printed. And when I had my name, Frank Zollman, then I had the name of the church, Glendale Seventh-day Adventist Church, and then I put pastor. Was I the pastor? I was. I was a pastor. I probably should have put associate pastor or intern pastor. It was a little uppity of me. I can admit it 40 years later. Couldn't have 39 years later, but... So when the secretary of the church saw it, she took exception with it. And so she told me right there that you're too cocky. She never did like me. We want to appear professional and we want to appear independent. And, I understand now that it wasn't the wisest thing to do. But we want to appear like we can handle it all. And I know that personally, I have had a personal independent spirit for many years. And I've had to work on that. But in fact, we aren't able to do everything we need done for ourselves. Let's put it this way. That independent spirit, I don't need help from anyone, that independent spirit is contrary to the whole concept of the book of Acts in the early church, in which God wanted to create a community. Jesus wanted to leave a community that the people were dependent upon each other. We do need each other. As much as we might want to think and act as though we're independent and we don't need someone else, we do need one another. And sometimes it's hard for us to admit that. We need each other, and we have the responsibility to help each other and to keep each other. In actual fact, the answer to Cain's question was, we are our brother's keeper. We are our sister's keeper. And so when we exhibit a spirit of independence, as though we don't need other people's help, we are actually breaking the spirit of what Jesus wanted to have done in his church. Here's this text. Bear ye one another's burdens, and so fulfill the law of Christ. Bear one another's burdens. It's a command from Scripture. Now, it's easy to use this command. It's easy to obey this command oftentimes for independent people if they're the ones who are bearing other people's burdens. You see? But it's harder when you have to have other people bear your burdens. It's hard sometimes to accept help from people. But isn't that why God gave us a church family? So we can lift each other up and bear each other's burdens? So one of the problems of independence is that it is against the kind of community that Jesus wants us to have in our church family. I'm going to be putting that this text into practice, hopefully very soon, because within a few months from now, I'm going to have a whole semi-tractor trailer pulling up in front of a door here in this new community, and I will need some people to help me bear my burdens. Just heads up. Just a heads up. You know, and think about this also. When we act too independent and don't allow other people to help us, we are actually robbing them of the opportunity to be blessed. Because people who also help bear other people's burdens, by doing that, they are also blessed. And the people whose burdens are being borne are blessed. So, hey, the way I look at it, it's a win-win. So that's why Paul tells us to bear one another's burdens. That's why God gave us a church family. But then there's another problem with independence, and that's on the personal, spiritual level. Unfortunately, many times we don't realize how much we need each other, or perhaps how much we need Jesus. You know, we say we do with our mouth, but how about our actions? Independence in a spiritual level is a problem. Now, I'm not talking about freedom from sin. That's a wonderful thing that Jesus has provided for us when he died on the cross. But I'm talking about spiritual independence. Jesus uses this in John 15:1. He uses an illustration of a plant, specifically a grapevine. He says, I am the true vine, and my Father is the vine dresser. Jesus says, I am the true vine. So in order for us to be branches of that vine, we have to be connected to that vine. We're going to see more of that in just a moment. But we have to be connected. Here is connected. This is a little bit of ground cover in the front of my house. It's quite lovely. Here's a little bit of it right here. I planted it in this pot so it would be still connected. So it's nice. Connected, disconnected. Same plant. Same plant. I pulled it off, and this is what it looks like after it's disconnected from the plant. Connected and disconnected. Ask yourself this morning, which plant best illustrates or represents my spiritual life? Which plant best illustrates your spiritual life? Is it the one that's connected and growing and dependent? Or is it the one that is dead and brown and withered because it is independent of the plant. You see, anytime we become independent of the vine, we will die. It simply happens because there's no life flowing into us. You saw these two interesting texts. First in John 15:5. These two texts are interesting to put together side by side. Jesus says, just later on down from the text we just read, John 15:5, apart from me, you can do how much? Nothing. Apart from me, Jesus says, you can do nothing. How much? Does nothing really mean nothing? It does. And then you contrast it with this wonderful text, Philippians 4:13. I can do how much? All things through Christ who strengthens me. How much? How much difference is there between nothing and all? How wouldn't we be crazy to accept nothing when we can accept all? Anybody know who the donut man is? One person knows who the donut man is. That's pathetic. Well, the donut man is a children's singer from about 25 years ago. You know him too? Not personally, but you've heard him. The donut man sings this song. I have to think about it for a second. Steve Green also sings one. Oh, here it is. Okay. The donut man version goes, I can do all things, all things, all things. I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. Philippians 4:13. How much? How much? Sing it with me. I can do all things, all things, all things. I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. Philippians 4:13. So, how much? Now, I know most of you have heard of Steve Green, right? So he sings one that goes like this. You might know it. I can do. Oh, that's not how it starts. Tell me, help me. I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. Anybody know this? I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. I can do all things through Jesus Christ who strengthens me. I'm really going to have to educate you folks about the donut man and Steve Green. I'm telling you. I'm ashamed of you. I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. Is that good news? Without me, you can do nothing. Is that good news? No, it's not. But I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. That pretty much sums it up. I guess I could have sat down right now, couldn't I? Not. So what we need, according to these passages, is not a declaration of independence. We need a declaration of dependence. A declaration of dependence on Jesus Christ. Because the problem is that an independent spirit that sometimes we have as individuals and as Americans, it can bleed off into our spiritual life. Independence and worry are the opposite of dependence and trust. And I don't know about you, but I've always struggled with independence and worry. And I've struggled with trying to keep my eyes focused upon the fact that Jesus has got this. And too often times, I think I got to get it. It's a problem. It is contrary. Independence and worry are the opposite of dependence and trust. And I have to tell you, I've been struggling with that over the last few months. I'm just going to be honest with you. And this transition here has not been the easiest thing in the world, because I was absolutely convinced, and how many homeowners are not convinced of this? I was absolutely convinced that the day I put my house on the market, it would sell. Because it's such a wonderful house, and it's such a distinctive property. And my wife has these gardens that are just filled with flowers. Oh, who wouldn't want to live there? Well, so we've waited, and well, maybe if I keep the lawn mowed better, it'll make it more attractive. I don't know. So I've been worrying. There have been nights, I'm just confessing this to you, there are nights I have not slept as well as I should because of the stress of the transition here and not selling my house and driving back and forth almost daily now. When I first came a few months ago, I told you that I was staying overnight several nights a week in a hotel. I've discovered that when I was a child, I thought living in a hotel was so much fun. Now, not so much. Not so much. I like my own bed at home, and so I've decided that we're going to do this commuting thing. And then Candace got the job at Spencerville, and so she commutes that way, and I commute this way almost every single day. We needed to sell our house, and just a couple weeks ago, many of you know this, we've got a contract on the house. And what's interesting to me is that the same weekend, we got two contracts, two offers on the house. I don't understand it, but the Lord does. It's His timing. The next problem to worry about is, where am I going to move? Fixing to come about June 21 or July 21, I am fixing to become homeless. But the good news is that in the contract, the Lord provided that I can rent my house back for 6 months. So I'm not under pressure. My wife keeps saying, don't worry about it, Frank. God's got this. And I need to listen to my wife better. Right, wives? Yes. I need to listen to my wife better. Perhaps it is that the house we're supposed to buy isn't even on the market yet. I don't know. But that's up to God. After all these years of seeing how God's got my back, wouldn't you think I'd believe it now? I have to tell you, in school, I was a good student. In the class of the Declaration of Dependence, I'm a slow learner. I need remedial help. And the Lord is patient, and He will give remedial help. On down to John 15, 4 and 5. Jesus said, abide in me and I in you. As the branch cannot bear fruit of itself except it abide in the vine, nor no more can ye, except ye abide in me. I am the vine, you are the branches. He that abides in me and I in him, the same bringeth forth much fruit. For without me you can do nothing. How much? Nothing. So what's the secret of bearing much fruit? What's the secret of being able to do much? It's to connect with Jesus, to abide with Jesus. Now, the word here in Greek is a very interesting word. Not necessarily the word itself, but its variety of meanings. The word in Greek is meno, if you want to know. What most people don't know is that if I use Greek words in my sermons, the conference pays me more. So that's why I always try to do a little bit of Greek stuff. So different translations translate this passage a little differently. And the word is meno. So the ESV says, he who abides in me and I in him. So the word abide. But the complete Jewish Bible says, those who stay united with me and I with them. I like that. Stay united. Contemporary English Bible says, if you stay joined to me and I stay joined to you. You get the idea of the experience that's being talked about here when it says abiding with Jesus. God's Word translation, and also the Amplified Version, says, those who live in me while I live in them. I like that. And part of what I really like about it is that it's implied that if we live in Jesus, the promise is He will live in us. That's the secret to being able to stay connected to Jesus. It's not anything we can muster, but it's because He lives within us. The NIV and the RSV say, if you remain in me and I in you. The Young's literal translation says, he who is remaining in me and I in him. The Wycliffe Bible says, the one who dwelleth in me and I in him. See this idea of a reciprocal relationship, a connection. If we want to be with Jesus, He wants to be with us. That's the great thing. There's another translation of the Bible. It's the FJZV, the Frank J. Zollman version. It says, this version says, whoever connects and stays connected to me, I will stay connected to him. You see you see the relationship He wants? He wants to be connected with us, and He promises us that if we will connect with Him, He will not abandon us. He will stay connected with us as we stay connected with Him. So what happens? There are a couple things that happens when we are connected. You might miss it if you don't see it in the passage. Verse 5 says, I am the vine, you are the branches. He that abides in me and I in him, the same brings forth what? Much fruit. Much fruit. By staying connected with Jesus, it enables us to bring forth fruit. We can't bring fruit by ourselves independently unless we're connected with the vine. You think about a grapevine. When I was a child, we had grapevines on our property. The most neglected grapevines in the world. Because at 8 years old, my dad left home and I was home alone with my mom and my two sisters, and I was the man of the house, and I took care of all the lawn work. I took care of everything that happened around the house. And I had this huge grapevine that was so strong and had such long tendrils. And I mean, it was a killer grapevine. One problem: it didn't have any grapes on it. It's because I found out later when I became probably about 12 or 13 that in order to they were Concord grapes. In order to get grapes on a grapevine, you have to cut it up. You have to prune it. I mean, you have to prune it so heavily you think you're going to kill the thing. And so when I learned that, I went out and, wow, did I go crazy. And my mom thought I had gone crazy. But the next year we had grapes. Because you have to get all the junk out of the way. And then when the vine is connected, the branches are connected to the vine, you expect good fruit. And if you look at your life and you're struggling and you're not producing good fruit, I will ask you not to try harder. I will ask you to look at your connection with Jesus. Because it is impossible for the branch that's connected to the vine, it's impossible for it not to bear fruit. It has to. It's a natural outcome to bear fruit. Jesus wants us to be fruitful and productive. And He promises us that if we will do so, we will bear much fruit. There's one more step after we bear fruit. Continuing on in John 15, it's John 15:11. Jesus says this, I have told you this, that my joy may be in you, and that your joy may be complete. Now there's something else exciting that happens. Once we're connected with the vine, we bear fruit, and it brings joy. It brings joy. I was raised around joy all my life. My mother's name was Joyce. So her nickname was Joy. But my mom helped me understand what joy is. Joy is not an emotion. Joy in Jesus is not an emotion, although it may make you feel better. Joy in Jesus is not happiness, although it's likely you will be happy. Joy in Jesus is not having fun, although it's likely if you have joy in Jesus, most of the time you'll be having fun. Joy in Jesus transcends feeling and emotion. Joy in Jesus is there because we are connected with the vine. We're bearing fruit, and it can't help but bring joy to our lives. It's all about being connected. Again, today, if you don't have joy in your life, don't get a book of jokes to read. If you don't have joy in your life, check your connection. We can't afford to go a single day without being connected. We as Christians, as Seventh-day Adventist Christians, cannot afford to take many vacations away from Jesus. You know what a mini vacation away from Jesus looks like? It's this. A mini vacation from Jesus is when you want to do something really badly, and you know you couldn't invite him to go with you. So you go by yourself. You want to do something so badly. I don't know what it is, and I'm not going to try to get explicit, but you can use your own imaginations. Whatever it may be for you. But you want to do something that you know Jesus would not approve. And so because of that, you say, well, I'm just going to go do this by myself and take a mini vacation away from Jesus. We can't afford to do that. We cannot afford to be disconnected from the vine. We cannot afford to be cut off from the life-giving flow of the vine, even a moment. We must be dependent upon Jesus all the time. Why? That's why. This is connected. This is disconnected. Which one resembles your spiritual life? Now, the good news is that it's different in the spiritual world. In the natural world, this is hopeless. This is worth nothing but to be, sorry about that, janitors. This is worth nothing but to be burned. The good news, though, in the spiritual life is that you could look like this today, and because of Jesus, you can look like this tomorrow. Because He will graft you in. He'll allow you to come back. He'll allow you to get connected again. I don't know why He does it. He must love us a lot. So, 2 texts. Whoops. 2 texts. John 15:5. Without me, you can do how much? I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. The choice is who you'll be connected to. I encourage you to make this your day of a declaration of dependence. I want to tell you to end the story about a woman named Louisa Stead. She wrote the hymn, "'Tis So Sweet to Trust in Jesus." It's a beautiful hymn. You would think that this woman must have been a master of faith and trust, and her life must have been so happy. But in actual fact, this song, "'Tis So Sweet to Trust in Jesus," was written out of tragedy. She lived in the late 1800s, She married Mr. Stead in 1875, and they had a little girl named Lily. When Lily was 4 years old, the family decided to go on a picnic one day. They lived in New York, so they went out to Long Island Sound and had a little picnic. And while they were having their picnic, they could hear screams and cries off in the distance in the water, and there was a boy there who was drowning, a young boy. And Mr. Stead did what you would expect him to do. He ran out into the water and swam out to the boy and tried to rescue him. But if you know the statistics are very grim. Because many times when a person tries to rescue a drowning person, they end up being a victim also. And the little boy took them both down, and both died as Louisa and her little girl Lily stood and watched. A tragedy. Can't imagine it, how difficult it must have been. This was in about 1879 or 80, probably 1880. And then here comes this song. 'Tis so sweet to trust in Jesus, just to take him at his word, just to rest upon his promise, just to know, thus saith the Lord. Oh, Jesus, give me faith like that. Give me faith like that. You know, when I look at my little troubles and I look at my little trials and my little worries, how small they are. And yet they keep me awake at night. How small they are. What a wonderful testimony of trust. Jesus, Jesus, how I trust him. How I proved him o'er and o'er. Jesus, Jesus, precious Jesus. Oh, for grace to trust him more. Now, I've always been puzzled by the last phrase. If I had been writing the song, and I probably couldn't have because I don't have that kind of faith, but if I'd have been writing this song, I would have said, oh, for faith to trust him more. That seems to me the right word there. I have to have faith so I can trust Jesus. But I think she understood the truth about such trust in Jesus. It's not something we can generate in ourselves. It's not something that we can try harder and get that kind of faith. It's only something that Jesus can give us. We cannot get that kind of faith independently. The only way we can gain that kind of faith is through the grace of God, by being dependent upon Jesus every single day. Sing this song with me. 'Tis so sweet to trust in Jesus, just to take him at his word, just to rest upon his promise, just to know, thus saith the Lord. Jesus, Jesus, how I trust him, how I proved him more and more. Jesus, Jesus, precious Jesus, oh, for grace to trust him more. Do you want to have that kind of hope and trust and faith today? That kind of dependence today? The only thing that holds you back is you. You deciding that I am going to trust Jesus no matter what. The second verse is a very positive verse. It's kind of an affirmation. The first one, 'tis so sweet, but here she says, I'm so glad I learned to trust him. I'm so glad. Let's sing it together. I'm so glad I learned to trust Him. Precious Jesus, Savior, friend, and I know that He is with me, will be with me to the end. Jesus, if you'd like to say this morning, Jesus, I want to trust you in this way, just raise your hand right now. Just raise your hand and say, Jesus, give me this faith. Give me this trust. Lord, please rain it upon us today. Jesus, precious Jesus, oh, for grace to trust Him more. You've promised it, Lord Jesus. We claim that promise today. This week, when we feel faithless, make us faithful. When we feel weak, make us strong. When we feel independent, remind us that without you, we can do zip, nothing. But that with you, we can do all things. All things, all things. In His name I pray, amen.